Good morning. What is great, good, and real? And welcome to day 49 of the Do You Rules live stream experience. I am your hostess with the mostest. Am I supposed to be a hostess? I don't know. That's been going in my head. I feel like I've been wanting to say that for quite some time. And now that I've said it, I sort of regret it. Such is life. Such is life. I have a heavy mind today. And I think back to the movie with Jack Nicholson. I think it's The Departed, where he says, "Heavy lies the crown." And by no way do I want to intimate or imply that I'm wearing a crown that others might want. But certainly, I do believe throughout my journey that it is important that we all anoint ourselves and wear our crowns and wear them proudly. And so, with that, the concept for today is going to be built around mercy. Mercy. What does that mean? It's an uncomfortable word for me for a lot of reasons, which we'll get into. The Red Book of Magic. The medicated chapstick. The hydration that apparently is not good when it comes out of plastic. You see how I made all those rhyme? Ooh, damn, baby. I'm conflicted today. I'm conflicted today. I am very, very conflicted today. And so I'll start by saying I humbly, with great conviction and the authority I have within me, as someone who has anointed himself, who wears my crown proudly, I wear my crown proudly and I pray for my enemies. I pray sincerely and deeply and with all the empathy allowed. In the power of my soul and my energy and my being, I pray for all my enemies. And for all intents and purposes, for the sake of giving this conversation direction, I'm going to leave it implied that everyone is potentially an enemy. And if you're not with me, you're certainly against me. And that's just the way I want to see it. That's just the way that I believe it. And this is why I suggested Nicholson in the movie Departed, "Heavy lies the crown." And that if you haven't pursued and if you aren't in the constant pursuit of the highest version of yourself, then what are you doing? What are you doing? And why haven't you anointed yourself on that level? And whether you have or you haven't, I pray for all my enemies. I pray for mercy. Because I've come to know and learn and understand that throughout this journey, throughout this powerful and immensely deep and dark and arduous and all the things, man, that come with whatever it is I think I'm doing, and even that reality, the thought that I could be doing something, I can't help but pray for my own mercy. And that reality that I could need and require mercy, I talk about what could possibly be my greatest fear. I think this strokes and provokes and instigates a deep insecurity of mine, which, if I'm left to really consider, and I guess you would say pray on deeply, is the greatest impetus for my individual journey. That everyone is an enemy because everyone is against me because I exude a level of weakness that requires a massive amount of work. And I say that humbly and respectfully and with all the confidence and the submission to the authority and the crown I wear for all that I do to ensure that I am, at least in this space and time currently, knowing there's still a massive void and a tremendous amount of growth left, that I am borderline unfuckwithable. In a lot of ways, in a lot of ways, I can articulate myself emotionally, spiritually, intellectually in a way where it's like, what are you really going to say to me? There isn't much that can be said to me that I don't already know. That's empowerment. I offer that to you. And because I know that I'm striving and continuing to push in that area and lane, I pray for you. I pray if you don't have that intentionally. I pray if you bathe in ignorance willingly, and if you subject yourself to the simplicity of the comfortable life, because there's so much that goes on outside of our purviews, outside of our exposure, that is deeper than us in varying ways, and it comes down to really the irresponsibility of you who may have the opportunity to grow and expand yourself in every direction to not realize that you should pray for everyone. And yes, if you're not with me, you're an enemy. And so I'm unfuckwithable in that way. I can articulate myself to a super high degree in how I present myself intellectually, spiritually, and emotionally. The way I narrate, and I guess it would be my orator skills, it's intentional. I know what I'm doing. Look, I certainly don't want to project out, and I'm conscious of this, super conscious of this, to not present myself, particularly when I express myself through the vibration of words, my God-given gift to articulate myself out loud and speak of who I think I am in a way that is weak on any level. That I could have a level of intentional incompetence, and that we may believe that there isn't a level of intentionality around not being competent with how you express yourself in words. Blows my mind. I pray for my enemies, that you could allow yourself that weakness, that comfort to not be able to express yourself in a way that's clear, concise, and forceful and formidable. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? And so in that way, absolutely, I endeavor out to ensure that I'm at max capacity with how I narrate my life through words. I pray for my enemies. And then physically, my greatest clear incompetence, because I don't have some of the natural talent physically, the DNA, if you would, that supports growth physically in a way where I can exude obvious dominance. Massive weakness and insecurity of mine, that there's some people who just, I was reading something about, somebody was showing their interaction with their dad, and he had his back turned, and he was just a big, broad, wide dude. And one of the comments was, dude, your dad's back has a back. I'm not blessed in that way, so I have to work extra hard on my physical endurance and how I keep up and compete with the world physically. And so in that way, it's deliberate and intentional. To the capacity I'm allowed, I pray for my enemies, that we could have such low standards for ourselves physically that most men can't even push their weight around. I'm just telling you what's out there. And I'm not going to feel uncomfortable with the discomfort that is true for society, because it's your choice. You're intentionally weak physically if you can't move yourself around. If you're a man who, I believe it's inherent to be protector, and you can't even resemble and symbolize and even play pretend that you're somebody that's unfuckwithable in that level, in that way, that you're that weak, that you're not imposing in any way, that it doesn't exude off of you because you can't front that. When you walk around, it's not just about being able to physically do things at the most extreme levels. It's just that you look weak. And when you look weak, life returns you weakness. And that you haven't figured that out yet, I pray for you. I pray for you. I really pray for my enemies. I really seek mercy for all. And when I start to play with that narrative, when I start to play and consider and realize that that could be a thing, to what extent am I willing to be merciful? How about even the audacity for me to even say out loud that I'm willing to be merciful? Who am I to be merciful? Well, it's clear. It's clear I can be weak. It's clear and obvious that I can lack. It's clear and obvious that there are voids that can be to my detriment. And in that way, clearly I need mercy. So what do we do with this? What could it actually mean? How can we sort of compartmentalize and leverage this in a way that is impactful for the improvement journey? Because that's why we're here. That's why I'm here. The possibility to create a reality around constant improvement. And that I'm learning along the way that we must be merciful. Because I really don't want to, man, what would be the best way for me to articulate this? When I talk about heavy lies the crown, and this weight that continues to seem to build upon me, this weight that continues to seem to make attempts at overwhelming me, I asked the question out loud: if I can pray for my enemies and everyone's an enemy who's against me, what would really describe an enemy? Who would really be against us? What is really against us? What forces are available that don't permit us to achieve maximum capacity with our lives? Consider that. Why would you believe you have enemies? And what would if I pray for mercy for my enemies, is it possible to believe that we have enemies that could be praying for our downfall? Could it be that real? Is it that deep? Or am I just way out there? Have I lost it completely? It's a possibility. It's a possibility. So clearly, what do we need mercy from? I think it's a good question. So if you know, day 49, I wrote down some things. I just asked, worth repeating, where are we in our worlds, with our lives, particularly in Western Americanized culture? Who really are your enemies? The PTA, community members in your HOAs, right? Who are your enemies? Your neighbor down the block who is, wondering why you haven't shoveled your driveway and you don't bring your trash in when you're supposed to or out when you're supposed to. That they drive a Beamer or a Benz and you got a Honda. I mean, what are we talking about? The concept of enemies. This is what I talk about with the ignorance that we provide ourselves when we don't work on improving our lives regularly. We get caught up idolizing lifestyles that have nothing to do with us. Imagine that the impetus I'm starting to learn that I believe for my endeavoring out in this space to encourage everyone to improve is to ask the basic and fundamental question of, if you're not where you want to be in your life, where are you in your life? And what is the delta that you see between where you are and where you want to be at? And then I ask, what are you idolizing? Why do you even feel a delta? Imagine that. Ask that question. Do you ask that question? I ask that question. Is it even a valid question? I'm not where I want to be. Where do you see yourself? And why do you see yourself there? What is it about what you see that you believe you need? Which then begs the question, are you coveting and idolizing? And what is it that you're coveting and idolizing? These are very, words are dangerous in that way. Influence is dangerous in that way. That I could encourage you and influence you towards the possibility that you need to do better. But what is better? What does society say as far as, is it materialism? Financial greatness? What is it that gives us this void? And is it just for us to crave these things? And do we border on idolizing in a way that removes the integrity of the improvement process, of the actualization process, of the self-love? Because I believe deeply, you shouldn't and we shouldn't, life doesn't limit us in that way. But is there a more conscious, loving, compassionate way to achieve levels of success, inclusive of any materialism you might desire, that makes it right? Versus having the same desire, the same material instinct that life provides and offers, because you shouldn't be limited, but can be done wrong. If we strive for the same greatness and success and wrap it in an image that if you just look at the visual simulation associated, we say, yeah, that's worth doing. What makes two people standing in the same place at the same time with the same imagery more positive versus negative, more loving versus more hateful, more grandiose in a way that is godlike versus straight up devil and Satan? What is the delineation between the two? I pray for my enemies. I pray for my enemies. I pray for mercy for all my enemies. Which leads me to a very, very, very deep and dark and lonely place. Because I wonder if there's limits to being merciful. And then I wonder if there's limits to the world that we live in that could offer us mercy on the journey towards whatever it is you seek. I asked the question. Who are our enemies, and what is the concept of mercy? In language, compassion or forgiveness shown towards someone whom it is within one's power to punish or harm. Do I have the power and the authority to harm? Do we, do you, do I, as a collective? Certainly, we have the authority to harm in many ways. And typically, what I'm learning, what I experience, if we just be open and honest with the reality, particularly if you're living more of an indulgent life than you have accepted, there's a reality to, we could be so compensated. Excuse me for a second. Okay. There's a possibility. We talk about punishing or harming, how the average Joe could be influential in a harmful way. Have you not awakened to the level of abundance and expansiveness that is afforded you in today's world. For the most part, again, Western Americanized culture. I just read this, and I hope I don't get this wrong. I think it's in India. A man is going out to India to support this cause. It's like Happy Home or something like that. And Happy Home is a place that accepts and takes in children and people who are and who have been discarded by their natural born parents because they have some sort of deformity or deficiency. Hear what I'm saying to you. This is going to be corny. This is going to be, oh, what are you talking about, Jeff? We're not exposed to this, is my point at this level. You're not exposed to a level of poverty. And listen, I grew up again, South Bronx projects in the 80s on government assistance. I get it. I get that it's hard. I get that that we're deficient. I get that. I get that there's a complexity in that lifestyle and that it can very easily subdue us into complacency, conformity, and on with the social programming, and we never make it out. I get it. I get it. But imagine this, that there are cultures who believe that when you are born with this level of deformity and deficiency, it is a clear sign from God that you are being punished and that you must live punished until your next life when you come back healed. And so because of that, that level of punishment is karmic. It can't be around me. I dispose and discard of this child. That people could be pulling up middle of the night, randomly in the street, boop, drop this child off because they're not right. They don't have all of the natural gifts that should come with a normal life. That child got to go. And it's accepted. I get it. What I'm saying is people are looking around, they're like, I get it. This is what you're supposed to do. That's cultural. And so there's a home that has created a home, Happy Home, something along those lines, to accept and take in all these children. Why is that important to this conversation? Have mercy. Have mercy on yourself. What do you need forgiveness for to make yourself move, man? What are we actually talking about here? I get very frustrated. I get very frustrated. It's why sometimes I question, do I have the empathy to do this? That's the real question for me. Do I have the empathy and compassion to do this? Because I question sometimes, why do people like me and I and us who are in this space, why do we have to do this? You really need to be told this? But I can't be, I got to humble myself. That's why there's preachers and pastors and people who are way higher than me on the spectrum of being able to provide you assistance and guidance and love and support and mercy. I pray to have mercy on my enemies because I find it difficult to have mercy on people because I find it difficult to understand, what are you doing? I don't believe anymore that there's excuses. And then I have mercy on myself to say, be careful what you say out loud because I've had to endure some things, but it could be worse. I wasn't left on the side of the road as a child. Not in that literal sense anyway. I was left on the side of the road in a lot of ways, not in that way. I had a lot of support. I lacked a lot of support. There's degrees to this, right? So I'm actually sometimes fearful to have the mercy to be careful of what I say that might instigate and invoke an emotion of hatred and anger and frustration because I don't really want that for you in the way that it sounds. But I do question, what are you doing? Why are you still giving yourself excuses? Why are you still giving yourself an out? I don't have compassion for that. I struggle. I pray for that. I pray to have mercy on myself in that way because I realize it's a weakness of mine. So if I can come to the realization I have these weaknesses, I'm going to work on these weaknesses. What are you doing that you haven't come to that realization yet? I question. And so I fear needing mercy because to me, mercy implies weakness. Imagine that. Is that a thought to consider? Should we consider that? Is it rational and logical? And do you beg for mercy? when you have all your faculties, when you have opportunities, when you have life, you have life, and you choose to require mercy on top of mercy on top. You want compassion and forgiveness for what? You look around and you make all these requests of God and universe and creator and spirit and all these things. You pray and you pray and you pray. What are you praying for? Are you praying for handouts? I try to be, again, compassion. Where's my compassion, Jeff? Where's your compassion? I don't know. I lack it when it comes to, you have the opportunity, man. And I've come from humble enough beginnings to know, yeah, there's some of you just don't got it because you don't want it, and you don't want it, and you don't got it because you don't try. Why do we have to say these things out loud? Mercy can also mean an event to be grateful for, especially because its occurrence prevents something unpleasant or provides relief from suffering. Excuse me again. Let me collect myself while you collect yourself and consider being merciful. Be merciful. I don't mind being a conduit. I certainly look forward, although I struggle with this, to be a conduit to help prevent something unpleasant or provide relief from suffering. I'm willing to expose myself to a degree that says, if I am but a thinking thing, and I am but the simplest man alive from the standards of basic human existence, a regular dude, if I can put myself on display in a way that prevents someone suffering, I can pray for mercy in that way. I can. I still struggle with that concept from the perspective of what is my incentive, what is my motive, and should I have one, in the way that we've discussed briefly, and in a way of positivity around love and consciousness, for me following a moral compass towards virtuousness that allows me to be settled within myself to say, I'm doing it the best way I can. And that's a question that I think is worth asking for ourselves. If you're doing it, are you doing it the best way you can? Are you really doing it the best way you can? Are you really suffering where you do need the mercy to understand I'm making a lot of sacrifices because the world offers me all this potentiality around what it looks like, and the stimulants? We are stimulated sexually. We are stimulated financially. We are stimulated materially. All these things that are available to us at the at the at, think of, I'm getting hyped. The immediacy with which this abundant world provides us these stimulants. Am I wrong for drifting towards them? And in the same way, am I wrong for drifting away? I question too, for the mercy to understand that a lot of where we're at as a society is moving in this one particular direction. Can I really break free from the crowd? And then I wonder again, if I'm breaking free from the obviousness of the crowd, am I actually right or wrong in the process? Who am I? Who am I? So I worry that mercy implies weakness, but I am willing to say I'm I'm okay with becoming a symbol to help prevent suffering. If even to just say, yo, it's 5 o'clock in the morning now. He's been off since 4:30. This is day 49. Where's he really gotten him? You can ask that question. What has it gotten me? What has it gotten me? I don't know. Do we have a desire to relieve suffering? Do we have that desire? And imagine that we could consider to offer ourselves, because most of us hear something that's egregious or outrageous, and we want to provide relief from suffering, especially if it puts us on a stage to relieve suffering in a way that, oh, look, I stand for this. I stand for this because I don't stand for this. In a way, in a lot of ways, there's a lot of dark things that occur in our world that we stand up and say, no, 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 enough is enough, right? And some of that's obvious. But could we learn enough about ourselves to relieve our own suffering to ensure that we don't provide sufferance to the world? You hear what I'm trying to say? You understand what I'm asking here? Do you have the desire to relieve your own suffering so that you don't exude sufferance into the universe collectively? I asked this recently, right? Are you a nuisance to the world? Imagine that. Could you be a nuisance to God? God is all merciful. God is all forgiving. But in the same way, if you have every opportunity to be impactful to just your life, I'm not even asking you to, not that I'm asking you, not that I'm anybody to ask you, but I'm not suggesting that we should all be someone who change a massive amount of lives. One life changed is sufficient for a changed world. One life changed is sufficient for a changed world. You can change a life right now. You know whose life you can change? You can change your own life. You can change your own life. Do you have the compassion and the mercy for yourself to relieve yourself from suffering? That's an honest question. If you're suffering and you need to be medicated from that suffering and you need relief from the suffering, are you not your own relief? Can you not have enough mercy to understand that you have the power to relieve yourself to then possibly allow someone else who really needs to be relieved from suffering to receive the relief they need, but you're busy suffering from what? Self-inflicted punishment, self-inflicted laziness, self-inflicted procrastination, self-inflicted weakness, my greatest fear. You are doing it to you. It is you who are doing it to you. And the more that you stay in this state of nothingness, you become a nuisance to the world. You become a block. You become a barrier. You become a massive negative force field that prevents others who truly need relief from receiving the relief. Imagine that. That even someone who could be in the need of relief can be so self-merciful that they say, God, I know there's so many others who need it, who have it worse than me. And there's some people who have it worse than you. Imagine the worst. Imagine the worst. It's why I use the story of the kids being dropped off. They didn't do nothing but be born. They were born with some deficiencies. My God, have mercy. No, the culture says release ourselves from that. What truly are your issues? Who really are your enemies? I would venture to guess and argue that a lot of us who are suffering are in our own sufferance that is self-inflicted. Imagine you're punishing yourself. And why do we punish ourselves? Why? Because of what we idolize and what we see and what would describe us as the almighty and the all-being, the all-successful that we see is what? Can you not provide yourself your own relief? Do you really need to seek it outside of yourself? One changed life is a changed world. You can't change your own life. You don't have the power within you, the force, the fortitude, the desire. You don't have the desire to heal on your own. I asked that question. Can you not humble yourself enough and have enough compassion and mercy to say, if I take care of myself, maybe somebody else who really needs it will get it? And that led me to a question that I asked, right? If I really do have enemies, and everyone is an enemy who's against me, if you're not with me, you're against me. You're an enemy. I pray for you. I pray for all my enemies. But what could I possibly pray for all my enemies? It has to be mercy. Mercy, compassion, empathy, forgiveness. And I can confidently pray for mercy for all my enemies. Why? Because I continue to be able to become the most unfuckwithable person I can possibly become. And that is important to me relieving my own sufferance, my own healing, that I can articulate myself in every possible way that God has allowed me to articulate myself, to which you cannot fuck with me. It doesn't matter what you say. Doesn't matter how you say it. Doesn't matter what you do. Doesn't matter what I don't have. It doesn't matter what I'm deficient of, either by default because my programming, my DNA, and my code said so, or because I just haven't attained yet. I'm good. I stay on my path. I stay on my journey. I stay on my grind. You can't force me off. And I say that with the greatest of fear and compassion and empathy, to know, my God, it could be so much worse. But it isn't. It isn't. It just is. And so I move, I march, I push, I plow through. What are you going to say? So I pray for all my enemies. And in doing so, and having this level of compassion, and having this level of graciousness and power, I'm then left to struggle with, could I pray so much and so deeply and so intensely for my enemies that it could mean that God would put all enemies before me? And if clearly I have already articulated, if you're not with me, you're against me, you're against me, you're an enemy, I have a lot more enemies than I do have people that are with me. So imagine that 99% of everything available to me is an enemy. And I can say, I pray for mercy. Could this mean that God would then put the 99% who's against me ahead of me? And describe and define ahead. But would I be comfortable and compassionate and empathetic and gracious enough to say, take and accept that all may receive at a much higher level than I may ever receive? What could that possibly mean? To have the mercy to say, let everyone else have, even if it means I won't. And what exactly will I not have? And then I start to say to myself, well, if I can have some of this realization and this understanding and reason and rationalize with love for myself and know I'm good, then maybe if mercy is offered to all ahead of me, you can be defined with whatever passion, compassion, love, material, desire, lust, gluttonous lifestyle that you seek. For why should I judge what it is you should receive if you make the request to receive whatever it is you're requesting to receive? If it resolves my enemy in a way that brings them compassion and peace and harmony, who am I to judge how they get it? Could I possibly have enough mercy that I could be hurt in the process by anyone and everyone from anywhere, and know that in order for me to be relieved of that, everyone else would get and I would not, inclusive of what it is I think I deserve? I don't know. I don't know. But if you're not where you want to be, do you have the mercy to relieve your own sufferance? Could you find the mercy within yourself to move where you got to move? Change your mind, change your life. I am who I say I am. Do you and stay rich.